All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined from South America in the southern part of Brazil by Aleksandar Svetski. How are you doing, Alexander?
John, excellent. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, and Alexander is a serial entrepreneur, best-selling author, and founder and CEO of Atlantis, a new category of app blending travel community and decentralized tech. He previously founded and exited one of Australia's most successful fintech apps, authored the best-selling Uncommunist Manifesto, the Bushido of Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin Times. What we're going to talk about today is social media is changing and it's moving back towards social networks. So drawing on your experience, building Satlantis, what do you, what are the key differences between social media and really true social networks, and then also why do you see a shift back to social networks?
So the best way to answer this question is to zoom out and
Hmm.
just remember where we were 20 years ago when Facebook and the original social networks first came up.
Hmm.
What they were was evolution from the initial uh, Web 1.0, which was about publishers and consumers, right? So people would
Yeah.
just read whatever was on the web. Web 2.0 transformed it such that the people who were consuming content could also publish content. So you kind of had this two-way thing.
Hmm.
And then social networks, originally the digital social networks that formed up, they emulated what we as human beings do in real life, which is we established social connections. We're social creatures, so we have
Hmm.
friends, and our friends have friends, etc. And we have these like networks in the real world that are socially oriented, right? And this was brought onto into the online realm, and it enabled us to stay in contact with people that we knew from school and family from around the world, all this sort of stuff, right? And the content that we saw was generated by the people in our social graph, in our social network.
Hmm.
Now, fast forward about 10, 11 years, and the Google DeepMind team, working on increasing the relevance of the recommendation engine for YouTube, they made a breakthrough which increased, I think, viewing time by something like 10x. I can't remember the specific numbers, but people went from, maybe watching the next YouTube video to definitely watching the next YouTube
Hmm.
video on that recommendation algo. And around the same time, the parent company of TikTok called ByteDance, they they decided to implement a similar recommendation engine into what was called Douyin at the time, which was the Chinese equivalent of TikTok. It was
Right.
the original TikTok,
Hmm.
and it created a viral sensation. Like young Chinese would like get on the app and stick on the app and stay on the app. Um, w- Without getting into all of the details
Sure.
of what
Yeah, of
happened,
course.
essentially, um, Facebook kind of saw that, and then they decided to build their own recommendation algorithms. And this was sort of the rise of the AI 1.0 of the modern generation. And
Hmm.
they built these attention algorithms which tracked engagement and served you content based on what you were most likely to engage with. And this is where social networks started to morph into social media. And this is the key
Hmm.
word. So it became less and less and less about what your friends and contacts and followers were, or people who are following you were posting, and became more and more about what the algorithm
Hmm.
suggested to you based on your propensity to engage with it or remain in a consumer state. And I'm not making a judgment call on that. It is what
Right.
it is. Human beings are, we're attracted by things, etc., and that's what we do. But as this became more and more media, the incentives kind of changed, right?
Yeah.
So now, like if you think about 100 years ago, if you walk past two newspapers and one of them said, "Oh, it's a nice sunny day and everything's fine," and the other one said, "Storm coming," which one are you going to pick up? You're going to pick up the one that has like
Yeah.
some sort of danger, right?
Absolutely.
So our limbic brain is wired like this. So what ends up happening, just as a result of how human cognitive wiring functions, is that we are going to engage with certain things more than other things, and those things are what you would call media. So
Yeah.
that includes clickbait and slop and news and hysteria and all that sort of nonsense. And you end up getting these algorithms that kind of end up morphing or metastasizing into, like demons of some sort and just sucking people into a
Yeah,
vortex.
yeah,
So
which is where obviously where all the doom scrolling comes from.
correct,
I
exactly.
mean,
And
if you
that's
think about it, you're right. If you think back originally, like we didn't doom scroll when all of this first came out. You actually engaged with the content.
yeah, exactly. So it's all changed. So my feeling is that, but by no stretch of the imagination is doom scrolling or social media going to go away.
Mhm,
Media will
mhm.
always be here from the beginning of time until the end of time, right? People are always like looking for something to be hysterical about. But what social media has done, and the fact that every platform has moved towards media, has kind of left a gap
Yeah.
in the social network space. And this is what I'm interested to fill, because I'm under no illusion that, I'm going to change the behavior of 7 billion people. No, like 6 billion people are going to be addicted to social media, and that's what's going to happen. But maybe, just maybe, 100 million, 200 million, 500 million people are going to look for something a little bit more wholesome, and a little bit more about the social network. And that's kind of what I'm trying to build with Atlantis. So anyway, that's an overview. And my hope is that some segment of the global population starts to decide to move a little bit more towards social networking once again.
And talk to me. You wrote I think it was a Substack article, social networks in 2030, and you predict the rise of niche and micro social networks
Mhm.
focused on relationships, communities, etc. What trends or technologies do you see that's going to help this evolution?
Great question. So this is literally a part of this movement back to social networks. And I think what we're going to see is some sort of underlying protocol acting as the substrate for
Hmm.
these more niche or micro social networks building, because you still need a level of critical mass. And what you don't want to do as a developer of a micro social network is start your social graph from zero, right? You need
Hmm.
some sort of like baseline to build off. And there's been attempts at doing, a social protocol many times. In the early days of the internet, one of the big dreams was having a common identity protocol, but that never actually flourished or took hold. And identity remained a feature inside applications. So you
Yeah.
have an identity inside Amazon, you have an identity inside LinkedIn, you have an identity inside Instagram, you have identity with your internet banking, with your local doctor, with all of these things. The identity is inside the app. The holy grail is the identity is controlled and owned by the user, and then they can log into any single application with a single identity, and they can choose what information they want to share with whatever platform they're logging into. So there's a paradigm shift here, and
Hmm.
it seems to me that the identity protocol that has somewhat taken off is one called Noster,
Hmm.
and it's the one that we chose to build on. And there's a couple 100,000 people on there. It's relatively active. There's more sort of Bitcoin content and stuff like that on there. There's like health content, etc. And it's still, I will grant it, like it's early days,
Right.
but it's a mechanism for people to build different things on there. So there's some of the more successful apps on there at the moment are a little bit more like a Twitter sort of
Hmm.
experience. So Atlantis is more like a travel experience. So you got these two different experiences, with two different kind of users, but a common
Hmm.
social graph that ties it all together, which is very interesting.
Yeah, and based on your background in Bitcoin and decentralized currency and that how important is it for these social networks that there is user kind of sovereignty, that they get to choose like what's shared, what's known about them, and also reducing the kind of algorithmic censorship.
I think in the early days it's more important because it attracts the kind of person that's disgruntled
Hmm.
about the status quo. I think long term it becomes less important
Right.
because the more large something grows, the less people care about that sort of stuff. What I do like about it though is it's kind of when I'll use an analogy. When my wife wants to give our dog vitamins, she hides it in the food.
Yeah.
So I kind of envision Nostr being a little bit like that, which is it just comes with the package, and you kind of don't need to necessarily scream it on the label, like it's censorship resistance and all this sort of stuff, but it kind of like comes with it. And then if you are someone who is uh, you know, what's the word, sensitive or interested in having that option
Hmm.
for greater sovereignty, it's there. If
Yeah.
you don't care, you don't care. It doesn't matter. And I think that's how this will evolve in time.
Yeah, and obviously with your own platform like Atlantis, and you said that that is around travel community, and that how are you combining the technology with the real world experience with the real world relationships?
So, I'll give you one example. One of the things that we're trying to do is emulate what people do in the discovery of places that
Right.
they do in real life. So, when you go somewhere, sure, you'll probably look on Google Maps and try and get a sense of, which place has the most star ratings and all this sort of stuff.
Hmm.
But, more and more people are kind of disgruntled with that because they find a place has 5 stars
Yeah.
and they realize the 5 stars was fake
Yep.
or, by people you don't know and all this sort of stuff. So what you inevitably do is you ask a friend, like, hey, have you been here before?
Hmm.
Or do you know someone that's been here and you get a local recommendation? So inside our app, we have a map, very much like Google Maps, and people can add whatever they want from the map. But what's interesting is it uses your social graph to tell you whether someone you know or someone you know who knows someone and who also has similar interests to you
Hmm.
has either recommended the place, bookmarked the place, or discovered the place. So now all of a sudden you're getting not only are you getting recommendations that are more fit to you, but you can see inside the app on the tile that represents the merchant, you can see 6 of my friends have been here, or 12 of my friends have bookmarked this place, and that immediately tells you something about the place. Now, it could be 6 of your friends who have
Yeah.
really, really, really bad taste, and you're like, okay, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it could be like 6 of your friends that have really good taste, and you're like, "Okay, I trust this person. Okay, I'm definitely going there." So you don't have to sit there and, like, call them and message them and this and that and try and figure out what
Hmm.
to do and all that sort of stuff. It's there in one place, and I think that's something that's sorely missing in the world today is, like, how do we use the social graph for something other than just serving more
Right.
content? Well, when we travel, this is something we do in real life. Let's
Hmm.
try and bring that to the digital space.
Yeah. What have you learned from other, people like Foursquare and stuff who tried kind of somewhat similar things in the past? Or like, what are you doing differently now that that hopefully will generate more adoption and maybe greater usage, more utility?
Yeah, so for those who are ancient enough like us to remember Foursquare, so Foursquare was around, I think they launched 15 or 16 years ago, and they
Yeah.
they they, they did very well initially. I think they got up to 100 million users, but then they fizzled out. And my hypothesis on why it didn't work is for 2 reasons. One is I think the culture wasn't ready when Foursquare first came out. The idea of like taking a photo of your food at the
Yeah.
restaurant, kind of like foreign. We didn't do that stuff back then, right? Like
Hmm.
Instagram, in my opinion, had to come first and change the culture. Um, that's number one. Number two is if we remember what phones and apps were like 15 years ago, like a couple years after the iPhone came out, they were clunky. There was no way to build like real depth or
Yeah.
engagement into an app. So, Foursquare really leveraged one feature, which was check-ins. And that was
Yeah.
cool for a little bit, but it was a bit
Mhm.
gimmicky. There was no sort of, "Oh, my friends have been here and they've recommended," or this and that. Like, there's much more feature richness that we can do now.
Right.
So, I think those 2 factors combined, one is that the culture has changed, and 2, that we can build more depth into the application and better UX, I think give us an opportunity to do something somewhat similar to what Foursquare had originally envisioned, but just couldn't execute at the time.
Mhm.
And now, I mean, also with the rise of AI and the ability for us to generate, merchant profiles and all this other kind of stuff, it allows us to do what, probably needed a 500-person team at
Right.
Foursquare. Now we can do with a 12-person team, which is really incredible. So a lot of those, I would say, the tech, the the application, UX and density and structure, and then the culture. Those 3 things open the door for building something like this now in a way that
Mhm.
I don't believe was possible before.
Yeah, and then just how are these kind of micro communities and apps like yours? How will they manage? How will they be economically viable? Given, I mean, you don't want to go down the ad route because I mean that's obviously where we've all been. I was actually saying, sorry, just off topic. I was just laughing with somebody the other day about, you know. we all switched from cable TV to streaming services because we wanted to get away from the ads, and now we're just bombarded with ads on the streaming services. It's kind of the same
Totally,
experience, just replicated, to be honest.
totally, man. Yeah, look, I think the world is moving towards memberships. People
Hmm.
want to be part of clubs, they want to be part of communities, and they're somewhat willing to pay something to be a part of that. And in my opinion, that's going to be probably the primary driver of our revenue.
Hmm.
We may do ads, but not in a not like I never want to turn this into like an ad hellhole where you're just like being served crap you don't want to see. That being said, I do think there is a place for example, let's say you're a new restaurant that launches in a city and you are serving, I don't know, seed oil free meals that are
Right.
clean and none of that sort of stuff. And there's people on our app that are interested in seed oil free, sorry.
Hmm.
And they want to discover your place. Maybe we will allow you to boost your profile on the map
Right.
so that you can get some visibility amongst the people who've explicitly marked that interest. And maybe to kind of to benefit the people who may not ever want to see anything like that. Those who buy a premium membership on Atlantis, they could just mark a box which is "Don't show me any ads ever under any circumstance."
Right.
Whereas those who are like, yeah, I'm happy to see things that I might be interested in.
Sure.
Therefore, if they've opted in for that, and then there's relevant ads that we can show them, or I don't even want to call them ads, like boosted posts
Yeah.
or boosted visibility. I think there's an elegant way to do it like that, as opposed to the analogy that you just said about the cable TV. Is just you now can't even turn on a freaking show without the ad starting in the beginning. It's like, no,
Yeah.
I'm paying for this. I don't want to see it.
I know. No, and I agree with you on membership things. I mean, it's even something. I mean, I even do YouTube Premium because I just like got so sick of having to skip through ads on podcasts and stuff like that. Um, and I'm happy to pay that because it's a much better experience. How much do you think your vision of social networks can address the I feel like there's a lot of people, especially coming out of COVID, who are kind of rediscovering the idea of human connection or the idea of communities, or the world that we live in today has become so we're so connected but so disconnected at the
Mhm,
same
mhm.
time. We have, now people are even talking about what happens with AI and robots. I mean, are people just going to live at home with their robots and never like interact with human beings? What role do you think social networks and the way that you envision them can help to boost communities, like bring people out into the real world again, and help to support that I think growing need for that reconnection.
Yeah, I call it gave a talk in Portugal a couple weeks back, or actually, well, a couple months back, and I said, as the web, as cyberspace gets inundated with what I call slop, basically,
Mhm.
which is just like AI generated nonsense over
Mhm.
nonsense over, and everything's just regurgitated and all this kind of crap. And as you said, people are connected but not really connected, and they're just like disconnected. I think it creates this massive desire for what I call the three C's: connection, community, and curation. And
Mhm.
when I say curation, I mean like curation by people I know, trust, and have a relationship with. I'm not interested in curation from ChatGPT. Like, I don't want to
Right.
know what ChatGPT, the 10 places that ChatGPT suggests. No, no, no. I want to know the 10 places that John suggests when I come to San Diego. I want to know the
Mhm.
10 places that my wife suggests from Dominican Republic, etc. So I figure within that broader framework of these three C's, kind of like there's three pillars that people are interested in, connecting with, creating community with, or curating. That's people, places, and events. And all of those three things are in the real world.
Yeah.
Like, you want to connect with people in the real world and establish a relationship. You want to find places, go to places, etc., that are in the real world. Whether that's a restaurant, a cafe, a sauna, a lookout, a beach, a mountain, whatever. Like, but it's a real place. And then third, which I've seen this massive resurgence in appetite for real life events, whether it's a meetup or a retreat
Yeah.
or a conference or whatever, people are craving getting in person again and doing stuff. So I've seen this happening in a significant way over the last, particularly after COVID. Um, I have then thought, all right, I need to structure this entire app around that feature set specifically. Is
Mhm.
people, places, events. And we decided to build an entire events product. Like, if people are familiar with Eventbrite or meetup.com, like,
Yeah.
we've effectively got that inside Atlantis, and we've got the map and places and everything inside Atlantis. And obviously we've got people because it's a social network. And all of that is tied together. So now you can discover events, you can discover places, you can discover people, cities, all this sort of stuff, all influenced by your social graph. So it's dynamic, it's, personalized. And the end goal is to get you off the goddamn phone and into an event or a place or something with people, into a new destination. So I'm hoping that, this sort of
Mhm.
this social networking, by bringing people actually close to each other and creating communities and all this sort of stuff, will influence the behavior in such a way that people start connecting in real life again. I mean, that's my hope, that's my hypothesis,
Mhm.
as opposed to building another social network that is, about, recording yourself dancing in front of a mirror and,
Yeah.
pretending you're famous.
Yeah, we definitely don't need any more of that. I think that's saturated market.
Right.
Well, listen, Alexander, this has been fantastic. All of Alexander's information will be below this video. But before we go, please do remind people about what you do.
Absolutely. So we are building Atlantis, which is I believe, the first social travel network of its kind in the world. In fact, something that you wouldn't know about, John, and I'm going to mention it here for your audience for the first
Mhm.
time, is that we just rolled out an equity crowdfund, so people can actually own a piece of this. So if people find this message compelling, if they think that this has some legs and could become, a platform for the future, then they can have a look at that. I'll send you the link, John, so
Please
you've
do.
got it. But if they go to satlantis.io, they'll see a big banner there that says the equity crowdfund is
Mhm.
already live, and we just went live last week. We're raising 500,000, and we just crossed the minimum. So 100K was the minimum. In the first 3 days, we raised 160.
Nice.
So we are off to the races, and if people want to be involved, they can check that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, all the links will be below. I encourage you to go check it out. Much needed, getting back to sense of social community as opposed to getting caught up in your own doom scrolling or talking to your robot all day.
Indeed.
So thanks again, Alexander. Thank you for watching and listening. And I will see you all again very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, John.